Hello and welcome back to Full-On, your football podcast from the eyes of Fulham FC. With me today are our co-hosts Ash, Drew and Jack. Let's begin by going over the departure of Bowen Morte. Lads, what are your thoughts on the matter?
I'll start on this one. I think it's quite upsetting news, actually. Losing Lewis by way. I know that we've known for a couple of months now. He's been a great servant to Fulham as a player and as a coach. And we lost him once as a player, and he went off to West Ham, and then obviously he's started his coaching career and has come back, and he's been an absolute revelation with Silva. And I think that they work so well together. Genuinely, I believe that Fulham's biggest bit of work this summer is going to be replacing Lewis Barmorte with somebody who is as attack minded as he is, and has such a good rapport with not just the fans but the players. They probably won't find that, but hopefully we can get a name in that will do the business with that. I think Lewis Barmorte is a legend amongst Fulham fans. If you're old enough to have seen him play, you've loved him from then. If you're not quite old enough to or remember him playing, you'll love him as a coach because he's done some great work with some of our players since he's been here as a coach. I think that his connection with Muniz this season has probably helped with Muniz's growth. He seems to be extremely popular with the rest of the players. I think anyone who saw the scenes yesterday after the game, where he was obviously him and Silva being sort of held aloft by players, and they were sort of celebrating the end of the season, will know that he's a very popular member of the backroom staff, and I'm quite proud of that we've had him here. He's going to go off and start his managerial career uh, now, and hopefully, at some point in the future, he does a good job at that, and he comes back and he's a future Fulham manager. Because it'll be lovely to have him back again. I don't know how you guys feel on that, but
What's the
I
age
think
difference
Louis,
between what's the age difference between him and Marco Silva? It can't be too
oh,
much.
they're a similar age because they used to play with each other. They played with each other for a little while, so they
Yeah,
must be
they've
they
known
must
each,
be
they,
around
they've
about the
known
same
each other
age.
since they were teenagers.
I
I'm
think
just
they're
think,
both
Yeah,
46 years old.
yeah, I'm just thinking there's probably still quite a bit of life in Marco Silva, and wishing him away for Boamorte to come in. I don't know whether or not I'd want to do that at
well,
this
I'm not
particular
obviously I'm not
time.
doing that.
No,
Obviously,
of
I'm not
course,
doing
of
that.
course.
It's more of a case of I'm under no illusions that Marco Silva is going to be a Fulham manager in 10 years' time.
Hmm,
Uh,
that's a
um,
fair
you
point.
know, so it's one of those things that I would love that at some point in the future to know that Lewis. It's not a complete goodbye for Lewis Bumway. It's more just a farewell. We'll see you soon sort of situation for me. Hopefully.
Yeah, I didn't get to see too much of him play in my time. I joined the scene quite late, just in football in general. But he's, from what I have seen, tremendous player and a truly tremendous coach. He's going to be an interesting replacement, most definitely. Do we have any inclination on who will be taking up the mantle? I'd like to see our under 21 coach step up. He seems to have done really well.
It's hard to say. I think there's been a few players, a few managers that are linked, but they've all been in managerial jobs around Europe. And I apologise for not knowing his name off the hand. There's the manager of Estrella, the club
Mm.
that Marco Silva used to manage himself, who has been linked as well. He might well want to come over and try his tops at coaching level in the Premier League, but it's really hard to see. Hayden Mullins has done an outstanding job with the under 21s. I fully agree with you. I think that anyone who watched the under 21 cup final last week, I don't know if you guys did. I did. I was very, very impressed with them. I've seen them play quite a few times this season. They play very good, fluid football, and the sort of football that I would not have associated with Hayden Mullins as a footballer, but to see him coaching it is has been quite impressive. The only thing with him maybe coming up to the first team is I don't know if he'd be wanting to do that at this point, at this stage in his coaching career, because he's only been at the club for a year. He might want some more time with the under 21s to have his stamp down there.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be a bad shout.
I mean, Parker did similar, didn't he? What was he? Under 21s at Spurs, assistant manager with us, and then manager.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be
I,
a huge leap up for him. I think it's the next step in his career. I just don't know whether or not it's with us or with someone else. I guess we find out.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think that let's say Lewis Morti's replacement is going to be one of the most important signings that Fulham make during the summer. I know that Marco Silva has probably already done loads of work in trying to bring some people in, and we know that Marco Silva is a very popular coach back in Portugal. So it wouldn't surprise me if the person who comes in has got that Portuguese connection, because we know that he likes having those home comforts in his coaching team. We'll have to wait and see. I think it's one of those ones that, over the summer when we record more of these episodes, we'll probably have this conversation 3 or 4 times about coaches that are linked with Lewis Belmoy, because I don't imagine the club are gonna move quickly in finding their replacement, because we don't do anything quickly. But we'll see what happens really.
Fair enough. Jack, any thoughts on the matter? Anything out of the ordinary, you think?
Out of the ordinary, build the statue. We're talking about a man here who scored against Chelsea 1-0, our first victory against them in 1979. Sorry, since 1979. But it might as well have been. 2006 was when it was. I was at the game. Build the statue. Build the statue. But yeah, no, I love the man. Sad to see him go. Wish him all the best. But I agree with Ash. Yeah, could see him back at Fulham in some years. Who knows? Also under no illusion that Marco Silva will be with us for a decade or however long, as lovely as that might be. Who knows? But love you, Morte. And if he manages to see this clip at all, do you remember when I was 12 years old in Epsom and I walked past the Starbucks coffee shop? I saw you in the window and I did a double take and you were sat there and you went, and then I walked past and that was it. So that's been my favourite interaction with you, Louis.
Love it.
But yeah, that's all I'll say. Love the man. Wish him all the best. And hope to see him again soon.
And yourself, Drew, or just echoing the similar sentiment?
Well, obviously he's a huge favourite. I mean, that season under Tigana when we came up, him, Hales, and Sahar was something special. Wish him all the best. Good old Lewis, good death, as he was known by Chris Coleman and that team. In terms of replacements, I'm not entirely sure Silva's going to be slow to fill the space. There has been, I'm sure you boys have seen it, there's been links to his former player, Goncalo Santos, who was former captain of Silva's. He's just been finished the season as an interim manager at Casapia, where he guided them to safety. And from Silva's comments after the Luton game, he's already had meetings with the Khans because they were obviously at Kenilworth Road, as you boys already know. He'd spoken to them previously. So I would imagine the subject of the backroom staff would have come up. But I think that whoever he gets is going to be, I echo the sentiment that I think there's going to be probably a Portuguese connection there. But who it's going to be, don't know yet. But I've got a sneaky feeling that will be sorted out before we make any signings.
Yeah, that makes sense. With that in mind, and since you mentioned Luton, what were our thoughts on the game yesterday and in fact the rest of the season?
I'll dive in really quick because I won't give an in-depth analysis. I watched the game 40 minutes, text my mother, who's away at the moment, couldn't watch the game, and I said, this is a really expletive, boring game. And then all hell broke loose in that at the end of the first half. And I was like, oh, okay, here we go. And then, yeah, I thought we could have done better defensively. We let in those goals a little bit silly. I don't think it was a penalty. I don't know about you lads. Really don't think that was a penalty given for their first goal. Don't know if you can see anything different. But, yeah, it was a nice result. Hate to see Luton go down. I know they needed to win by at least 12 goals before the start of the game. Is that right? I think.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Huge goal to
Forest.
Yeah, I think I don't think anyone was under the illusion that they were going to do that. But I do think it's a great club and great fans. Sad to see them go. So yeah, good luck to them. But nice win for us. It got us a place higher, didn't it? I suppose in the league.
It was a good result.
Yeah.
The change up in the lineup reminded me of when we had Chris David score against, I think it was Palace on the last day of the season.
2-2.
When we got relegated a few years back. It was just seeing what looked like fresh legs on the pitch for the full 90 minutes and a freedom of playing football. Yes, it meant we conceded a couple of silly goals, conceded a silly penalty that unfortunately in today's game is a penalty in my opinion. Would I have liked to have had it given against me as a defender? Not a chance, but unfortunately it's the game we live in nowadays. Do I think it was a fun watch? Yeah. Do I think there was really anything more about that game other than an enjoyable watch? Not really. It was a good opportunity for a few people to show that they've still got their wits about them, probably worth keeping. Wilson in particular, and I think him filling into Andreas's role in the middle of the park really suited him. It's almost like I've said that since January, and it's the first time it's been realised.
Did he play in the centre or was he wide with Adama on the other side?
He played centre, but he was constantly swapping with them between Adama and Iwobi as well. There was a constant flow between the three, which was actually quite nice to have three players that can play wide and central roles at the same time, all constantly shifting and swapping, which makes a nice change of pace. I think we probably could do that more often, but it depends really. But either way, I really liked Wilson through the middle. I think what did he end the game with? 2 assists and a goal, which is pretty exceptional going.
He leads the team in goal involvements this season.
Yeah, he does. He didn't before that yesterday though, which is funny enough. So
I did very nearly weed myself when Wilson scored that goal. That was great.
It was very trademark of him. A little bit more central. What I would have loved to seen is that Kearney opportunity going. I think we've missed Weldy actually being credited to him this season. Yeah, he got the one early on in the season that was off the crossbar, off the back of the keeper's head and in. Which unfortunately doesn't get credited to him, and we normally get at least one trademark Kearney Weldy a season.
Yeah, well, I think my personal view in the game is quite simple. You know, I think that it was job done. Really, it was a tricky game. I think Luton that surprisingly, you know, they came out and they played with zero pressure on it. You can really see that they relished that first 40 minutes. They played really well. And you know, Luton have been a really good watch this season. I know they've not quite had enough to stay up, and you know they probably only quite not had enough to stay up because of points deductions to Forest and stuff. But you know, no one gave Luton a chance in hell at the beginning of the season, and I think they've come up and they've been okay. They've not blown the league away. They've not been massively, you know, they've not done what other teams that have come up and managed to do. But they've come in. They've not changed their style of football. But they've played some decent hacking of football. And I think that we saw that first 40 minutes of the game yesterday, we were really under the cosh. In fact, I think that Adama's goal was our first attempt on target, which, by the way, was an absolute rocket. Like, this is what we all wanted Adama for, because he has those moments where he's just unpredictable. When he I think he miscontrolled the ball. I know some people are saying he sort of set himself up perfectly, but I think he miscontrolled it and then just it set up nicely, and then he managed to just got right behind it. It was a great finish.
It can be both.
And then obviously the penalty. Yeah, the penalty. As much as I love Calvin Bassey, I think that's a bit of naive defending. It was a bit like you didn't need to have your foot in. You know, there was a moment about 5 minutes or so beforehand where Tim Ream, who's slightly more obviously experienced, had a similar situation where but he was smart enough to sort of pull his foot out of the challenge, and they did, obviously nothing came of it. So it was a bit upsetting to concede. You know, Morris is always going to score those penalties. He's what he does. He's scored penalties against Fulham. It feels like every time that he's played against us, whether that be for Luton or for Barnsley. He's a good striker like that. And then obviously we seem to have a little bit of freedom. You know, it's really nice for us for once to concede after scoring after 90 seconds to then do it ourselves down the other end. And I think Jimenez, took his goal really, really well for a player that we haven't seen play much football since January because of injury, and then obviously Munez's resurgence. He took it really well. Second half was the same. I think they took it. His second goal was really great header. I think their and then the third goal. Sorry, their second goal, the free kick, was a bit poor defending wise. I think that two players potentially could have put a foot on that before it got to Leno, and then Leno was a bit slow to react because obviously it went through two players that should have got a foot to it, and it's just one of those ones where it sort of sneaks in, doesn't it? And it happens.
Yeah.
And then the fourth goal by Harry Wilson, very well taken. Typical Harry Wilson goal, isn't it? Edge of the box, top corner. Thank you very much. And that's what we love about Harry Wilson when he does that. My only down point for the game was that yet again we can't score free kicks. I don't know how many times in the last 2.5 years we've hit the woodwork from free kicks. It would be nice just for once a free kick goes in directly that isn't, just the one like Williams last year against Leicester that was just hit across the box and bounced in, similar to Luton's goal yesterday. Overall, I think it was a professional game. I think we did really well. I think that it could have been quite an emotional game for Luton, and it wasn't. And I think that they were a credit to themselves yesterday. And I was talking to a mate of mine this morning who is a Luton fan, and he was saying that there was an awful lot of people who were at that game that were just very emotional about being there because they waited a long time to get up in the Premier League, and those people that have been there and watched them when they were in the non-league were a bit upset that obviously it had come to an end. But I think that if they're lucky and they can keep hold of some of their players, they've got a hell of a chance to come back straight back up again next season if they can keep that squad mainly together. Because as much as us beating a 4-2 is a thing, I thought they were really good. So it's one of those things, isn't it? The game yesterday.
Yeah, very much so. Drew, your thoughts?
Ultimately, class told we had more quality than them. They're a well-organised team. I think one of the smart things they did is they didn't make wholesale changes like Burnley did, who have been a massive disappointment. And you always feel that Luton's a tough place to go, and they always came to play, and they never gave up, and they were a credit to themselves. But ultimately, I mean, especially I think it was Raul's first goal when we broke and he just put it across the goalkeeper. That was, with the greatest respect to them, I'm not sure they've got a striker that could probably do that. But they have got some good players. They've got a fabulous stadium on the way that looks really nice. So I think all in all, the future's quite bright for them. And like you all say, they've been a credit to themselves. So wish them all the best in their return to the Championship, really.
Sound. That brings us on to the rest of the season. What we'll steal something from one of our fellow podcasts here. What are our free word reviews for the season then?
115 charges.
I would go. It was okay. The season was okay.
Well, you don't mind, Ash, I'll start with this one. Last off season, I think we all agreed there was a lot of nervous tension around Craven Cottage with the Saudis setting their sights both on Mitrovic and Silva. I've been quite vocal on Twitter. I refuse to call it X, on Twitter about who I would have rather lost. For me, Silva's the key to everything that we do. But I have to give the team squad credit. We've scored the same amount of goals. Obviously, we haven't hit the same heights, but if you'd have said to me we'd have finished 14th with the same amount of goals and had the season we had a good cup run, if you'd said that to me last July, I would have taken it, because I was more than a little nervous, especially when we lost Mitrovic, because everyone associated with Fulham knows how we were set up. It was all built around him. So, yeah, it could have been a disaster, but I'm quite happy as it's the way it's shaken out.
So it was better than you expected then, because we actually finished 13th.
13th, sorry, I apologise. I'm doing us down. Yeah, it was better. I was fearful. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I was fearful last summer. I was concerned we were going to lose Silva. Mitrovic, I think after the meltdown at Old Trafford, he decided he was done with English football. But Silva was the one that really worried me. So I was really pleased when he signed the contract extension.
Yeah, I think my 3-word review would be Mitro was missed. We spent large chunk of the season playing catch up to filling that striker role, and it impacted our results ultimately. We lost a massive hold up man in the style of football that we were playing, which meant we either had to adjust to a different type of striker or we had to fill the boots of that hold up play. And it just took a bit longer than we wanted to sort of get that going. My only real downside to the season is that Muniz didn't really hit form until after we were out of the FA Cup, which was a bit of a bummer, because it would have been nice to see us take that sort of goal scoring form into that cup tie and hopefully push on from there. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed the cup run. Premier League season, it was not a memorable one, realistically, in my opinion, especially if we go on to stay in the league for a few more years, which we all hope we do, at the very least. Jack, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think my 3-word review would be could do better. I didn't really have so much of a fear as you were saying, Drew, in last summer. I now kind of fear for next season. I think 14th, or 13th, as we said, is okay. I want to finish top half at least. You know, there was a point where we were contending for Europe this season.
More so last season.
Well, yeah, but I mean, just to focus on this season. Well, even if we go back to the season before, it's like, are we digressing? You know, we want to be progressing more than anything, don't we? I just feel like we've had a lot of setbacks. Obviously, losing Mitro has been a massive thing, and I think I said it in the last episode. Maybe him going as he did, he was there and then he wasn't. Was very unceremonious. But yeah, I just think we this is the thing with Fulham. I think it's always been the case ever since I've supported this club. We've got the capability. We just need to make it happen. And who does that? Will it be down to Silva? Will it be down to the decisions of the board or whatever? I think we're in a great place now to try and make it happen. But I am concerned for next season that we might be in a fight against relegation, which is I don't wish to be negative. I don't wish to be pessimistic, but I don't know. I've just got that vibe, and I can't really put my finger on it and tell you why.
Highly depends on the window.
I can tell you what it is, Jack. You're a Fulham fan. It's as simple as that. My personal 3-word review would be it was okay. I completely agree with everything that Drew said about how we were concerned at the beginning of the season. If we'd done a show at the beginning of the season, it would have been quite bleak. There was a lot of concerns, especially around around Mitro and Marco. You know, I don't really mind losing Mitro that much. You know, I think that I agree with Drew. I think that he was very much done with English football after the Man United incident and the way he was thrown under the bus by, the English media. I think he just wanted out. By then, it didn't really matter how much, Fulham as a club loved him, how much we as fans loved him. I think it was probably best for him and his family to be gone at that point, because it wasn't really a healthy environment for him to be playing football in. Yes, the Saudis come in and they've offered us semi-decent money, and they've offered him life-changing money to go play there. But I think if we'd done this at the beginning of the season, I would have bit your hand off at a 13th place finish. The season's been okay in the sense of we've not really managed to hit form and stay in form in places. We've had some really great results this year. Any season where, we take 4 points off of Arsenal, we beat United at Old Trafford, you know, we beat Tottenham at home and convincingly. We win 2 games 5-0. Are not going to be bad seasons. It's just a case of, with those games, there's also been games like Burnley away, Burnley at home, Sheffield United away, Sheffield United at home. There's been so many games that we should have done better and we haven't, and there's been games where we probably shouldn't have done as well as we did. Ultimately, I think that this summer will be very important in terms of see how we progress for next year. I'm not concerned about relegation next year at the moment, mainly because all the noise that's coming out of the club is very much that the club are trying to get Marco Silva the targets that he wants, which to me means that he and the club are very much in mind to be working with each other. And I think, as I said earlier on, that the most important sign of the summer is going to be whoever replaces Luis Balmorte. The most important person at the football club now is not a player; it is Marco Silva. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how people look at it. I personally think the biggest personality and the biggest asset for every football club should be their manager, because they're the person in charge and the person who sets the tone for everything that we do. And I think that because I'm quite positive about what could happen next year if Marco's given funds during the summer to improve the squad. We're going to do shows over the summer where we talk about the squad, and there's bound to be players linked, leaving and coming in all over the place, because we tend to get that treatment. But as a season, it's not been bad. It's not been mind-bogglingly amazing. It would be really nice to finish top half of the season, top half, and maybe get into Europe. You look at Chelsea. They've managed to get into Europe, and for nearly half of the season they were 2-3 points ahead of us. There was one point during the season when we were ahead of them. And there's a difference between a football club that has been on the beach for 2.5 months and one that have just kept on going. If I was to pick out one disappointing thing from the whole season, the biggest disappointing thing from the whole season would be that as soon as we hit 40 points, we seemed to stop play. We stopped. And it just weren't great. And that's the one thing that I would like to see improved as a football club, that that we show a bit more ambition in terms of finishing higher up the table. Even the win yesterday, it took us from 14th to 13th. That's worth that £2.8 million to the club.
Yeah.
That one position up in the table. So if especially a football club that has had lots of money problems over the last year, when we talk about issues with money and finances,
Yeah.
it's important.
I think something that's worth paying attention to is our our thoughts and feelings about the upcoming season now, and how we feel towards the first game of the season. Because had you asked me at this point last season, having the season just finished, I would have said, and I did say, and I've been laughed at for it, that Fulham would have been pushing for European places this season. And then we lost Mitro, and then there was the threat of losing Marco Silva, and then we were about to lose João Paulinho. And that really made me start thinking relegation was on the ropes had we lost Paulinho. I think a lot of players have stepped up and actually performed really well and prevented that from happening. And we've done okay, as you said. What's interesting is that I say that we've missed Mitro a lot, but we've actually scored the exact same number of goals this season as we did last season. Where we've fallen short is that we've conceded more goals, which have resulted in us chasing games quite often. which I suppose brings us on to who has been our stars of the season and where we're at in terms of our own awards and who we think are the showstoppers.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna take over here just to be annoying, only because obviously we were when we were setting this up. I'm the one who collated everything. I think that anyone who watched FFC and me, the show that obviously predates this one that we've sort of moved in and merged on, and all of you guys have joined me on this fun journey of talking about football and Fulham. Will know that we did these last season at the end of the season, and they're a bit of fun. It's a good way of looking back at the season. It's a good way of looking at the club and sort of getting an idea about what everyone feels. One thing I will invite is obviously if you're a Fulham fan watching this, it would be nice to hear your opinions on who you would vote for certain awards that we have. And obviously we've got some awards that aren't Fulham centric; they're very much Premier League based as well. So if you've got opinions on who should have won those awards, please share them with us because I think we're all open to that conversation. We'll start from I think probably the most important award for us to start on for the season, which is obviously everyone's player of the season. So I think that we'll start with AJ. Who did you vote for your player of the season?
My player of the season would be Jedi, Anthony Robinson.
About yourself, Mozza?
As we were just talking about him, Palhinha.
Drew?
I'm with AJ on this one. I appreciate he gets a lot of stick about his crossing and his final ball, but he, in terms of recovery speed, interceptions, I think Jedi was crucial for us. I really do. First and foremost, a defender.
Yeah, I've gone for Calvin Bassey. I think that he's been fantastic this season. I know he came in and had a bit of a shaky start, but he's been great in terms of that. AJ, why would you personally pick Robinson to be your player of the season?
I mean, I thought it was sort of a given, really, with him being a standout performer, him being drastically improved on season, him really settling into the Premier League, and exactly what we said in our last podcast, he has been the best left back in the Premier League this season. Yeah, you could argue that I'm going to butcher his name, Vardial, I think it is, for Man City, has been exceptional. Not a natural left back, so you've got to give him props for that. In fact, Luton's left back, I can't remember his name, but he's also been exceptional. There have been a few others that have been there and matched Robinson in terms of their output for their club. But in terms of sheer numbers, we showed it last week, or we spoke about it. Sorry, not last week, last podcast, in that he was number one for so many different categories. And that, from a Fulham fan, to compete with other players in his position across the rest of the league, I can't pick anyone else for that reason. If I picked any other player and then picked another position, another player that could play in that position, I would take someone else from a different club to replace them. Whereas Robinson, I don't think I would currently replace, based on form at least, by any left back in the Premier League currently. And I think that's why I have to give it to him.
Do you agree with that? Is that your reasoning for him as well?
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself. I just think that his recovery speed, his interceptions. I mean, I know he's been linked with top 6 clubs, but yeah, he's taken a lot of stick, but I think he's improved year on year, and I'm very happy with him. And I'm one of those people that when Fulham fans get on his case, I'm very much. You'll see how important he is when he's not there, because we don't have a huge amount of explosive pace throughout the side, but he is. mean, you can't teach speed, and full credit to him.
Absolutely.
Very happy with him.
Mozza, how about yourself, mate? You've gone for João Palhinha. What's your reasoning behind João?
I'm just going to keep mine sweet and short. I mean, he's just awesome, isn't he? Like, he is daddy. He is daddy. Most yellow cards. Tough, hard as nails. Like, you won't mess with him. He almost left us, but then he, let's not go over the details. And like, if he failed a medical at Bayern Munich, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He's still with us. Marco said that he's going to be with us next season and that he's a key player. He's the man. He's the man.
Yeah. So something I'd argue in that case is maybe the yellow cards we could pull down a little bit. Maybe he could. Like I know he's got the most tackles in the Premier League or even in Europe, and that's completely understandable. And even his tackle success rate is so high, and you to make that many tackles, you are likely to commit a few fouls. But maybe we can reduce the number of yellow cards, because to be at 13 and worried about him being suspended for the beginning of the upcoming season over the last few games and biting my nails every time that he's been put in a tackle, I could do without that every year.
No. Don't be boring. Let's build the statue of Daddy João now. Do it. Come on, we need a player like this. All joking aside,
no, we do.
I've been thinking for seasons. We need a brick expletive house to take people out. Sorry, that sounds bad. Not take people out. just be like aggressive, not to the point of wanting to hurt people, but not being afraid to go in for a challenge. And that is the man that we need. And I think Bassey's quite similar as well, who I'll go on to later. But I was worried that we were going to lose him earlier this season. But we need a player like Palhinha, and
I think an interesting point to make here, and it's something we can discuss in a future podcast. But we had a player that used to tackle like that, and he was exceptionally bad at it in the sense of he was the king of professional fouls in Johansson, and he wasn't afraid to get into a tackle, but he got booked a hell of a lot less for making much worse tackles than some of the ones Palhinha gets booked for. And it's crazy that the impression of a player based on maybe their appearance, maybe their stature, as in their size, I don't know. But we've seen like small defensive midfielders get away with tackles because of maybe their personality. I don't know. It's something I'd love to discuss in a future podcast, in that what is it that draws some players to get more cards than other players for the same type of tackles, if not progressively better tackles or worse tackles.
Yeah,
you're
right.
I disagree with that, because Johansson played a different position.
McDonald
was the central defensive midfielder. Johansson was more of a box-to-box midfielder who, Dan, you're going to have to bleep this out, excelled at housery.
Yeah.
He would wind other people up, and AJ's completely right. He was proper naughty, and we loved him for it. Okay? We absolutely loved him for it. But he's the sort of guy that was, you're running along beside him, he would pinch you. Yeah, and he'd do that sly stuff. And especially when he scored against QPR and things like that, But I think going back to AJ's point, I think Palhinha's reputation goes before him, and I think people look for him. That's my own personal opinion. I'm biased because I love him. Yeah. And I think referees should leave him alone, and I think he should be completely exempt from any bookings.
Well, we see that this season, anyone who watched the Man United game where he got yellow carded when Bruno Fernandes kicked him.
Yeah.
He got yellow carded for that.
Was it against Arsenal? He won the ball. I think it was Arsenal. He won the ball cleanly, and it was given as a yellow card and a foul.
Yeah, you're right, AJ.
Yeah. I mean, anywho, back to the matter at hand. Our player of the season. We've got to concede somewhere. Ashley,
well, I haven't argued the point for Bassey, right? But I concede. I've only said Calvin Bassey because I love him, And Calvin, if you're watching this, mate, I love you. Like, literally, like,
It's
changed my
echoed. Don't
nationality to
worry.
Nigerian and everything, right? But we have to choose. And personally, for me, my second place player was Anthony Robertson, which even shocks me saying it because I am one of those fans, sorry, that have absolutely loved calling out his end product. But he's been absolutely superb this year. And Mozza, I'm sorry, I love Joe as well. He's an absolute force. But for me personally, if I'm going to concede, I'm going to only concede the player of the season to Anthony Robertson because he's been absolutely outstanding.
That's
And
fine.
again, if you're watching Anthony, I'm sorry for every bad word I ever said, mate.
Can I just say, Jedi?
You're amazing.
I've got a Jedi tattoo on my leg there, so
Oh,
That's not creepy at all.
represent.
that needs clipping up and turning into a short. You just standing up and showing off your thighs for no reason.
Flashing a bit of leg.
It's a tattoo of the Jedi Order. So
Yeah, okay. You go,
Yeah.
girl.
I can see myself. Player of the season should probably be Anthony Robertson.
Cool. So I think that gives us 3 out of 4. We'd have to say that Anthony Robinson is our player of the season. So let's move on to signing of the season. I think it's a clean sweep here. We'll just say it in one word and then be quick to talk about it. Bassey.
Bassey, yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, Bassey, Calvin Bassey by far. Yeah,
Can't argue it, can you? I mean, he had semi-big boots to fill. I know Jack won't agree in Tim Ream, who has performed, in my opinion, since joining the Premier League. But he got injured. Bassey stepped up. He had a few interesting moments playing as a right centre-back, and I never want to see him play there ever again. He's clearly a left centre-back and needs to stay there. He is exceptional at it and someone that I really, really hope we don't lose because of his age and his performance this season, because I could see someone coming in with a sneaky offer for him.
Yeah, I think just quickly follow up on that. We discussed it on the last podcast when we were asked who we were frightened of losing, and Ash and I both, because we were talking in terms of losing Tosin, and I think it was generally agreed that we didn't want to lose him, but we're keeping Bassey. And out of the two of them, it was a no-brainer. And when we were talking about players that we think people might come in for, I think it was. I mean, obviously Muniz was the headline one, but I think Ash, you said, and I agreed. The fear is someone takes Bassey because he'd get into that United team.
Yeah, I think Bassey going, and let's not drive a negative spin on our awards. We will bring it back to a positive, but it's typical Fulham fashion to look for the negative, even on an awards ceremony. We could be we could be winning the Premier League, and there'd be something that would go wrong, and we'd have to talk about it. But to just discuss Bassey potentially leaving, we really need to hold on to Bassey in terms of building a centre-back partnership, because as I said in the last podcast, we haven't had a centre-back partnership since Hangle and Hughes in the Premier League that has played the majority of the season together, and we need one because it's showing in the goals we're conceding, and we need a partnership of centre-backs that know each other just brilliantly. But back to a positive, to have someone hit the ground running, whom we were told by his Ajax's fans that he's nothing exceptional and that we're not getting anything great, and he'd be a good squad player at best. To have that translate into signing of the season, and even for Ash's vote, player of the season, shows that he's just been exceptional. Is there anything other than my glowing recommendations of Bassey that anyone wants to say? There we go. We've got him back. Let's discuss what's next then. So following on from player of the season and signing of the season, one that there probably isn't too many players we can pick from is Young Player of the Season. And oddly enough, my original vote would have been Bassey had he not turned 24 in January. I think it was January, his birthday. But we've strictly said under 23s. So, Ash, who was your vote for?
I think there's only been one young player this season who's come into the team and made a real difference for the squad. So I've gone for Rodrigo Muniz.
Fair enough. Drew, who have you gone for?
Well, I knew Muniz was going to go for a clean sweep, so I went for Jay Stansfield because he played for the whole season. And you all know I've got a Stansfield fetish. Like, what can I say?
No, something else worth clipping up there. We'll definitely make that into a reel.
So yeah, I mean, Muniz. Look, boys, I'm not going to fight you on this. I'm really pleased for him because he had a really torrid time. And he plays with a smile on his face. He's been a breath of fresh air. His upside's massive. And I am selfishly very much looking forward to him and Stansfield in the same team next season.
Absolutely. Following on from our previous podcast, we have had the manager confirm that Stansfield will be staying next season. So no Bundesliga loan for him, no loan off to a high-end championship club. He will be playing in the Premier League, or at least some of the Premier League probably feature more likely in cup games. But being on the positive side of things, let's see how he does. You've spoiled it a little bit there, Drew, in that you said a bit of a clean sweep. Yes, both the Jacks have also voted for Muniz, and I think it's quite obvious why. He brings something different to the Fulham strike force. He's had an exceptional period in where he's done really well, and he has something that Fulham can really do with, which is constant positivity. We don't get that very often as Fulham fans. So constant smile on his face. With that, I don't think there's too much more to talk about with the young player of the season. Most improved player of the season. Jack, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, there's not too much to add to the last answer, which was Muniz as well. Lads come on leagues and bounds. So, I imagine there's going to be more to talk about him further on in these nominations and awards, which I will add to then. So I'll leave it for now, because I'm sure you gentlemen will have more informed and articulate answers. But yeah, Muniz for me.
Ash, and yourself?
Muniz, he's been outstanding since January, hasn't he? As a player that, we saw, couldn't even get into the Borough team. As the song famously goes, he went to Borough, couldn't even start. He's been outstanding, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I know there's some people that are still claiming it to be a purple patch that might not have come to an end yet. But I personally think that as a player, he works so hard for the team. As a man, he's so likable. Gotta love to see him. The way he's improved has been amazing.
I was channeling my inner Muniz before the podcast started. Fulham God, or was it football God fish? I was off fishing just beforehand, so absolutely didn't catch anything. But that's for Muniz to do, as he's used to hitting the back of the net. My vote was actually for Lukic, funnily enough. I think he's improved drastically, and we're seeing glimpses of the form that we were promised by Marco Silva through preseason. He said that Lukic was the best player at Fulham in preseason, and then it just didn't turn into that for the first half of the season. Since January, when there was threat of him leaving, he's suddenly become absolutely brilliant. And I think probably his most memorable games for us have been when he's played instead of Paulinho, and it's eased up a lot in my mind that if we do lose Paulinho, yes, we will need to replace him, but there won't be as big of a harsh of a transition, knowing that Lukic can step up and perform really well. So Lukic is my most improved player of the season. And Drew, you have the deciding vote.
I did vote Muniz, but I like what you say about Lukic. I think he's a great player. What the interesting thing about him though is I think he brings more offensively to the team, and I think I would like to see him more of an innate role than a direct replacement for Polinia, because I just think there's more to his game than that. And as much as I absolutely adore Harrison Reed, I think Reed is just naturally better suited for being more of a defensive midfielder. But Lukic just gives us more in terms of being able to open up the field and get up and down. In terms of most improved, it's quite interesting because I always thought that Lukic was good. He just wasn't given an opportunity. Whereas with Muniz a couple of times he looked like Bambi on ice, you know. So that's probably why I steered away from Lukic. But Lukic is a great shout, and I'm glad we've got him.
Yeah, well, 3 votes to Muniz. He has cleaned up the young player of the season and the most improved player of the season. Let's see if he can clean up the next one as well. Goal of the season. Jack, who are you voting for?
Yeah, I'm going to go a bit sort of outside the box, and that's not meant to be a football pun, but I'm going for the Raul Backhill versus Forest.
Real shame you didn't pick a goal that was outside of the box then.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, you know, we could talk for hours about Raul and how good or how bad he's been, or etc. But I just love that it was a sneaky little backheel against Forest, and it was a goal that I think he needed. I'm saying this against after our game against Luton yesterday, where he got a couple of nice ones in as well. But I just thought, yeah, it was nice, and I saw sort of the other options that there could be, but I thought, yeah, let's give him this one.
Yeah, it was a good goal, to be fair. I suppose Forest fans would be at our throats telling us it was a foul in the build-up as he yeets the player onto the floor, and I think I've used that term right if I'm down with the kids. He absolutely yeets the player onto the floor before scrolling across the box and backheeling it in. So if for whatever reason you see this Jimenez, backheels, yes. Rabonas, no. Please.
I agree.
I actually gave it to Muniz versus Sheffield United. We all knew an overhead kick was coming at some point, similar to Raul and Rabonas. Muniz had tried a few overhead kicks previously, hadn't quite come off. We knew one was coming. It's difficult to not give goal of the season to an overhead kick. So I'm stereotypical. I'm sorry. Drew, Ash, what are your votes?
I agree. I was there at Sheffield United, right behind the goal when it went in, and you could see exactly what he was trying to do. I thought it was great because that was a game. Ash has already mentioned it. What a disaster defensively. But yeah, I mean, nothing to say. It was. I was
positives, Drew. Positives.
I'm just saying. I was lucky enough to be there, and it was a cracking goal. So that's
Excellent
what I'm saying.
Stuff. Ash, deciding vote.
Yeah. Well, I know he hasn't clean swept it because Mozza's gone outside the box of his thinking. But Muniz's bicycle kick against Sheffield United, I think that, you know, to get a point last minute of a game in that fashion, you know, it takes some cojones for a player to do it. And I know he's tried it about 84 times before he managed to get one on target. But
to be fair, he's had a few of them on target, just not necessarily all of them very good. I think with that in mind, then something that might have us arguing a little bit more, save of the season. Something that most people shy away from, especially when you're a team like Fulham, because our goalkeepers tend to make quite a lot of saves, and it's quite difficult to narrow that down. But it's something that we wanted to throw in as just something different. So who wants to start us off?
Well, I'll start off on this one. Because as someone who played it as a goalkeeper for, 8 years of my life, up and from from a teenager in my early 20s. I know how hard it is to be a goalkeeper. The one thing we do know is this award's definitely being won by Leno because he's the only one who's played in goal this season. But I think for me, I've gone for probably one of the best goalkeeping displays of the season of in a very long time for Fulham goalkeeper, which was Leno opening day of the season against Everton. The whole game he was outstanding. He made numerous saves. In fact, when we had a little pre-discussion about this, and we were talking about who we were going to vote for in this. I did admit that I knew it was definitely from this game. I just wasn't 100% sure what save I was going to go for. But the save I've gone for would be Leno's save against Iwobi in that game where Iwobi had gone through 1-on-1. It was very close call. I think it was like 6-yard box.
It was at that moment. It was at that moment Iwobi decided he didn't want to play against Leno again all season.
Exactly. And it was just an absolutely outstanding point blank save. Strong hands. You know, it was a good. We know Iwobi's finishing sometimes can be a bit wayward, but it wasn't a bad shot. Just a really great save, and I think it capped off what was just an outstanding performance. If I could give a save of the season to one whole game display, it would be that. I think it was just outstanding.
Yeah, that performance was incredible. And actually, Leno, I believe, if I'm still correct, has the second most Player of the Match awards in the Premier League as a goalkeeper. The only person who had more than him this season was ex-Fulham goalkeeper Areola, which is an interesting one. I actually went for a different save, and from a different game. I've gone Leno versus Nunes. I think it might have actually been in the cup game. I'm not entirely sure, but it still counts as the season. It was an incredible save from close range, and it was just another one of those games where he just excelled in his performance. What was interesting, and if the rumours are true, he's actually been struggling with a shoulder problem since early January. So the fact that he's played every game since then and is still been performing. Yes, there have been a few games where he hasn't been up to his regular standards, but the fact that he's likely been injured in that game and still pulled off that save, just incredible from me. Jack, yourself?
Sorry, this is. Are we still on save?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, save of the season.
I just got so pulled into everything you blokes were saying. Yeah, Leno versus Nunes. Yeah. I don't know what's funny about that. Am I using the wrong?
No. dripping with insincerity, mate.
Yeah. I've been told that I come across insincere, but it is just my character.
No, it's endearing. It's endearing, mate.
Leno versus Nunes. Yeah.
Fair enough. And yourself, Drew?
Well, I have to give props to Ash for this because I just went for the Everton game, first game of the season, and it wasn't until Ash pointed out that I had to pick one save because he was immense the whole game. He was absolutely immense, and he was the reason we won it. But yeah, the Iwobi save when Iwobi broke through. I mean, he spread himself, made himself big. But I mean, you could have picked a number of saves.
For the matter that one of us has to concede here, I'm going to make it easy. I think I can concede to that Iwobi save and the fact that we won the game off of his performance, unlike the Liverpool result. Probably tips it in its favour for me. Sorry, Jack, if you wanted to really argue the point for his save against Nunes, but I'm happy to concede that one and say that Leno versus Iwobi is our save of the season. If I'm not mistaken, you've got a few surprise awards for us, Ash, before we get on to some of the Premier League awards.
Yeah, I do have a couple. And the reason why we got together before this and we voted for games and goals is because sometimes you have to sit down, you have to think, and you have to review. But there's a couple that I want you guys to give me answers to, because I want the instant answer. I don't want the one that you because I want the one that comes to your brain first for
So we'll do
these
this as
awards for Fulham this season. They should just be quite simple, one moment answers. We shouldn't have to explain them.
quick
Hopefully,
fire.
they should just be quick fire answers. But I want to know from you guys, what was your oh my god moment of the season? Now, everyone, OMG moment of the season, if you want to take it out of there. What was the one moment from the season that you genuinely couldn't believe was happening right in front of you?
Was it? Are we talking Premier League wide or just Fulham?
From Fulham.
I'll go straight away, and it's going to come up in my awards later. But it was beating United away.
Paulinia equaliser against Arsenal after the red card. That's the only game this season where something drastic happened. I thought, oh my god, we don't do this, and we've done it.
Yeah, I will pick that for the simple reason I'd actually left, and I was outside. I was outside the Emirates kicking cars.
There we go then. Sorry to whomever cars Drew kicked in the process if you're listening.
I didn't mean that. If anyone from the Metropolitan Police is watching.
Ash, what else have you got for us?
Okay, so I want to know because these ones are a bit fun, but what was your most outstanding performance of the season? So there's one player in one game where if you had to say, if you want to know why Fulham fans love certain players, it was because of this player in this game. Watch it and you'll understand why they're so liked. What would it be?
Hate to be basic. Leno Everton.
That's a really
not
good
basic
shout.
because it's not basic because that would be my answer. So
yeah, that's a really good shout. I mean, Zhao's a massive favourite, but that's why we sing Super Burn Leno in goal. I mean, I dread to think where we'd be without him. But yeah, he started the season and going back to AJ's point about him being injured, AJ's quite right because he's ruled out of the European Championships now because Silva came out and said it. So yeah, that's a very good call. I'm glad someone here can do the thinking for me because I had no clue then.
Jack, anything different to ours?
I'm going to pass because I really haven't got an answer for you right now on the spot. I'm not good at stuff like that. I'm not a football nerd like you blokes.
We're quite fortunate that we tend to play as a team when we play well, as opposed to having one player carry us.
No, I'd rather not. Give you a load of waffle. I'll have to pass on that one, I'm afraid. But I'll keep it in mind for next season.
Any more for us, Ash?
There is a few more, but I'm just going to do one more because we're running a bit tight on time and we have got other things we want to discuss. We're going to be talking about VAR all summer long. We know we are because there's obviously a vote coming up in a couple of weeks by the Premier League about VAR and whether or not they want it to stay. But I want to call this award the FVAR award, right? Because we're not going to go on the positives and we're not going to go by what moment has Fulham got the most from VAR. But what was the worst VAR call against us this season?
Man City away, second goal.
Yeah,
jumped over the ball in front of Leno. Even Alan Shearer swore about that. I mean, that was just ridiculous. Ridiculous. I mean, how I even now I can't spake. Mental.
Yeah, I might have gone something else if it weren't for the fact that the way VAR is used has actually changed since that incident because of how bad that incident was. Like we've seen it actually be checked and double checked every single time since that incident, that it has to be given to that, to have such a tremendous, and feel free to bleep this, up that it's caused an entire system to relook at how it's done for the remainder of the season from that point onwards, I'm sorry, it has to be the same thing. I'd pick something else not to be boring, but it's impossible to argue with that.
Yeah, what about you, Mozza? Have you got one?
Well, I am going to be boring again and say I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. So we'll have to pass. I do remember that Man City thing that Drew mentioned, but yeah, I'm
Okay.
off. I've been found out.
Okay, so I obviously I haven't taken part in these three quick ones, and there's a reason why I asked. We didn't put these ones up in advance, was because I wanted to get the opinion that comes to your head first, because there are going to be moments where if you think about it first, it's going to be the one that most affected you. The Man City away call was shocking, but I don't really think it had much in terms of result. I think we really get battered either way in that game. But it is up there with one of the worst calls of the season, isn't it? That absolutely everyone, it's bad when every podcast that's related to football talks about how bad of a call it is, and it was quite shocking.
But
That'll do. Obviously, from the quick awards I had on, we'll move back onto the Premier League ones, obviously, because we got to go back to being a bit more positive around about football as a whole. So, should we jump on the first Premier League award?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done our player of the season. Who, in your opinion, is the Premier League player of the season? I'll go first. I'm actually probably going a little bit outside of the box here. I'm going with Ollie Watkins. He has been tremendous. He has an unattainable amount of goals and assists combined this season for what is a season that has resulted in his team qualifying for the Champions League. I can't think of anyone better. Foden or Palmer are probably close second and thirds for me, but for anyone to carry their team to a Champions League, I've got to give it to them. Drew, yourself?
I've actually gone for Foden. The reason being is Watkins is Brentford scum. I know he scored a load of goals, but Foden has elevated himself into. I mean, he's now in terms of his importance to Man City, arguably as important as KDB. And
More so,
I couldn't imagine saying that about anyone else in terms of KDB and the impact he's had on that team. But full credit to him, and I think, and I'm putting my England team hat on here, he has to start alongside Bellingham in the champ. He's got to, and we've got to play him centrally.
Absolutely.
I think he's been fantastic. I genuinely do.
My heart goes out to the Twitter user that said when Foden signed his contract extension with Man City that Foden agrees to sit on the bench for the next 5 years, because that turned out really well. Ash, who are you going with?
I agree with Drew. For me, it's going to be Phil Foden for all the reasons that he's just said. He has become more than just an important part of Pep's squad, but I think that he, for me, has been. When I watch other teams play football, if you watch Premier League football, that games that Fulham aren't involved in, I enjoy watching Phil Foden play football. I didn't enjoy watching Phil Foden play football 2 weeks ago, but I enjoy watching Phil Foden play football because when he first came through at Man City, he got that whole spiel. Everyone was like, "Yes, he's a good young player," but it's easy to look like a good young player when you have £3 billion worth of talent around you.
Yeah.
But he has been absolutely outstanding this season. If I was Pep Guardiola, he would probably be my first name on my team sheet every single week. And I think that he does something amazing for Man City where he doesn't just play in one position. He plays in 2 or 3 different positions, depending on where Pep needs him. And he's outstanding in both of them, especially when he's needed. He's played some really big games this year where he has been just the most standout player. And I fully agree with Drew. I cannot wait for the Euros this summer to watch him and Bellingham play with each other. I know our luck though, because he'll be on the team I'm actually supporting then, so he'll turn to rubble. But he's absolutely he's been outstanding. So for me, Phil Foden has to be player of the season.
And for yourself, Jack, who have you gone with?
Yeah, I was just going to go boring again and say Watkins, just for being in a club that's a bit lower and scoring goals.
Makes sense. We're actually not going to argue the point on this one. It's a split decision, and we're going to let the people in the comments answer it for us. So please do comment and let us know who you think is the Premier League player of the season. Is it Foden? Is it Watkins? Is it someone different? Let us know. So a very quick fire one then. We won't go into too much detail on it. Premier League signing of the season. I've actually gone for, unfortunately, a Chelsea player in Cole Palmer. I don't like that he plays for Chelsea. I don't like that he's doing well for Chelsea. I don't like Chelsea, but he's done exceptionally. What about yourself, Ash?
I'll be quick as well. I've gone for Ross Barkley. I think that he's come in at Luton, not an easy job to do, especially when he's been written off because he's had so many injuries and he's been out of the Premier League for a little bit. He's come in, he's done an outstanding job when you consider where Luton are. He gave them some real stability in the middle of the park, and he was a player that we'll probably talk about a bit later in the pod when we talk about Premier League signings and some potential movings of players that I mentioned in the last pod. I'd love to see him come over to Fulham because he's been very, very good and he's probably helped Luton massively.
Yeah, Jack, yourself, who have you gone with?
I've just gone with one of our own guys, Calvin Bassey. Again, I've not really kept on top of who the new signings were for every other club in the league. And that's, like I said earlier, when we nominated him for that award, I just think he's done wonders for us. So he has my vote.
Yep. Drew, who have you gone with?
Reluctantly, I've had to give it to Palmer because even when it was going wrong for Chelsea, he was the only thing that was going right.
Yeah.
And what amazes me, and this takes us back to the Man City discussion we just had, is why they let him go. I don't understand. I don't understand because they brought in, is it Dokic? Doku. I apologise. Sorry, Jeremy, if you're watching. I just think Palmer's immense, and he's got to be considered an England player. I think his impact has been massive. So I agree with you, Ash.
I mean, even
AJ, sorry, not Ash. You and Barkley. Barkley, that was a great shout, by the way, Ash.
I agree. Barkley is a great shout. He's done exceptionally. We won't go over it too much. When it comes to Palmer and City, they also signed the Wolves player who hasn't seen the light of day in the City squad and let go of Palmer for that reason. So it's just a bit of a myth for us. We'll be very quick and go Premier League goal of the season. I think we only need one word for all of this. And that is, two. Is it one word, two words? Overhead kick, 2 words. Overheads is the word I was going for. Garnacho.
Yeah, Garnacho goes to Everton.
Easy. Yeah, easy.
Easy. Right, we'll draw it back into Fulham for the last 4 and we'll go quick fire. Result of the season, I've gone 3-0 Spurs.
Yeah, I went 2-1 versus 2-1 United away. Always special win at United.
I went 2-1 at home via Arsenal because we haven't beaten them for ages and they've murdered us the last few times we've been in the Premier League. And I was sitting next to a Gooner when we were doing it, so go us.
Lovely stuff. Jack?
Yeah, 2-1 United away because it had been, I think, years since we'd actually won there. I think, was it 2003? When we beat them there, Chris Coleman was in charge and Junichi Inamoto, for those that may remember him.
I was sitting in the United
Cup.
Then.
We won it one time.
Toto, we won it one time, yeah. But that's my vote for those reasons.
Great. Celebration of the season. Celebration of the season, a fun one to commemorate someone that scored and either took the piss, and you can bleep that one too, or was just overall bundles of joy. So I actually went with someone that took the piss, and that's Pereira versus Arsenal, to score against them at the Emirates, and then do Henri's celebration with the corner flag. Yeah, that takes it for me. Ash, yourself?
I went full soppy bugger on this one, and I went with Muniz at Burnley. I don't know what it is about seeing a grown man cry because he's so happy, but my God, it got me. And so for me, it's going to be Muniz at Burnley because you could really see it really meant something to him, and it meant a lot to us because of it. So I've gone for Muniz.
Drew, yourself?
Ironically enough, it was one that I missed. It was Polinia at Arsenal, because he just clearly ran over to the fans. He clearly meant so much to him, and I genuinely do think he's got a strong affinity with the club. And plus the fact we got out of jail, so that was mine.
Jack, yourself?
Yeah, I've gone a bit left field here, and I'll try and keep this in a nutshell as best as I can. But there's an emotional reason. So I've gone for the crying fan versus Arsenal. If we can find out who this man is, then let's get him on the podcast. But the bloke that went like that after Bobby D. Cordova-Reid scored against Arsenal 2-1. Now, I was in hospital for a week just before Christmas. Nearly died. Won't go into that, but it was painful to move. It was painful to laugh. And I was like bedridden all over that period. And seeing Fulham beat Arsenal at home was the happiest I'd been all over that period. And the moment I saw that geezer going like that, also in slow-mo as well, as they did on the TV, was the best I'd felt in 2 weeks. And I want to give my vote to him. Like I say, let's find him, please. Build the statue. Build the statue.
We may not find him, but who we have found is my mother, who's now in frame. So everyone can say hello to my mum.
Hello.
AJ's mum.
Who wasn't necessarily aware she was in frame. Still in frame, mum.
AJ's mum, you're famous.
Yes, you will be on YouTube this week, so look out for that one. Nice blooper for the remainder of the for this one, and that will probably end up on a reel somewhere. But yes, that is my mum. No inappropriate comments, fans. Thank you. Yeah, I think if I'm going to concede to anyone, I'm going to give it to you, Jack, just because of that heartstring pulling that you've done there to convince us that we have to vote for your celebration of the season. And equally, if we can find that fan, you are welcome on the podcast, of course.
I mean, you can't really argue against anything after the sentence, I almost died.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you could have picked
Not
anything.
to laugh at your expense, Jack, but that was
the point was that was the like happiest I'd felt in 2 weeks, like, because I never expected us. I almost didn't watch the game. My wife bought it on TV, and I was in bed. She was like, "Come downstairs," and I was like, "All right, I'll watch it then. We're not going to win. Blow me down, blow me down." At the cottage, and that fan, doing that celebration when we still had 30 minutes of the game to go. The testicles on that guy, I love it, and we did it. So yeah, that was the best Christmas ever.
Absolutely love it. Unsung hero of the season. One word, sweet, short and sweet. Mine's actually Kenny.
Mine's Raoul.
Harrison Reed. 2 words.
Chestnuts would be mine then.
The crying fan, or are we talking about Castagna?
Castagna, yeah.
Cool, no worries. And ankle breaker of the season. And just to clarify what that is, that's someone that's either had one particular exceptional piece of skill that broke a player's ankles, or someone that does it routinely. I went for someone that does it routinely and said Willian. He is constantly leaving players for dust. Ash?
I went for a moment in the season that it was Mozza's selection for goal of the season, but it was the Jimenez back heel. Not just because he obviously scored with a back heel, but it was the strength to hold a player off. I think he sent Olaena into the river with how far he threw him. And then, to sort of round the keeper and knock it in with a back heel is an exceptional bit of skill. So that would be my bit.
Drew?
I went for Traore just because, I'm big on speed.
Can't argue with it.
He's got something that no one else has. And if you, going back to our favourite moments, the United win away, it was him opening up with that burst of pace that went straight through their midfield. And that's just, I'd like to see more of him. I think, yeah. But anyway, Traore for me.
And Jack?
Yeah, I agree with Drew. Can't add anything onto that. If you need any more evidence, you can just watch his highlights against Luton on the weekend, showing that pace and that goal. So, yeah, that's the same for me. Traore.
I think that wraps up our end of season awards. Let us all know what you think in terms of our awards, whether or not we've all been idiots or you agree with any of us or who you would pick. And please feel free to let us know in the comments on any platform you may watch it. Moving on to a different topic, someone that won lots of awards for Fulham. We've recently found out that Ryan Sessegnon is going to be released on a free transfer. We'll try not to leave too much to the imagination, but are we bringing him home, boys?
I think Drew had a fair bit to say on this, so we'll let him go first.
Are we? I don't know. Would I like us to? Yes. There's still dispute about what his best position is. Some say left back. Some say left wing. I think he's a midfielder. I don't think defensively he's strong enough to be a fullback. Some have pointed out to the injury problems he's had at Spurs. I have my strong suspicions he wasn't happy at Spurs, and that manifested itself in his play and his physical condition. And the thing that does worry me, and this sort of circles back to a point AJ was making earlier, we have one of the oldest squads in the league, and he's only 24. And we know that he's thrived at the Cottage. And we've talked about Silva, and we're all big Silva fans. I think if there's one manager that can get the best out of him, it's probably Silva. For a nil transfer, I don't see anything but upside. So I'd bring him home, but
I'm going to be the negative Nelly here. I do agree on a free transfer. There's not a lot of risk in it, but have we seen many transfers where we've signed an ex-player go well? No, we haven't. Dempsey didn't work. I can't think of too many others that we've done it, but I can't think of any that have gone particularly well. Again, if you want to shut me up, let me know in the comments. Anyone that came home and was brilliant.
Gordon Davis.
We'd love to know. There you go. There's one. There's one, but if you know any more, please do let me know. But frankly, injury problems. Has he reached his ceiling? Was his performances down to the type of football we were playing at the time and allowing him to essentially play as a bit of a shadow striker under Jokanovic? Because that's where he was exceptional at poaching. And I don't necessarily know if him being on the ball more regularly under Marco Silva as a winger will be a detriment to his game or not, because he's not getting in as a left back over Robinson unless he's playing on elite cup games. So I don't necessarily think it's what we need for the squad. We do need winger options. If we can get him back to his goal scoring best, if he can prove that he's decent on the ball, if he can stay injury free, if his salary isn't going to be too expensive coming from Spurs, all things to consider with this, then yes, I would take him home. Absolutely. I'd love to see him back at his goal scoring best. I want to be positive about it. But at the same time, there are a lot of conditions there where, yes, it's a free transfer, but is he going to take a huge salary drop? I don't know. Ashley, or Ash, sorry.
So I thought my mum was calling me then. I think that, that Sess, I'd have him back in a heartbeat. I will say something that I spent 3 years saying while he was at Fulham. He's not a left back. He's an outstanding player who, we all love. That even when he went to Tottenham, he's one of the only players I can think of in recent memory, other than maybe Carvalho, who left, and he went with everyone's well wishes that we know that Tottenham were at the time, steps ahead of where Fulham were as a football club, and you had to go try it on. Yes, he's had a bad couple of years. Yes, he's had a few injuries. But I agree with Drew. I think an awful lot of being in an environment where you're not being nurtured doesn't help when you get injuries. I would love to see him come back home because it would be him coming back home. But I also agree with you, Jack, that it'd have to be for the right money in terms of wages a week, especially as it'll be a free transfer. It'd probably be on some money. But if there's a place where he can come back and he can revitalise and he can get his career back on track, it's at Fulham. We look at that left wing now. We're worried about Willian and what's going to happen over the summer and whether or not he's going to choose to stay or not. Potentially, Sessegnon coming in might ease that issue with Fulham, knowing that they have something there. It'll be a great signing FFP wise because he'll be a free transfer. And it's very rare that football clubs can say, we've made 30 million quid off a player. And 2 years later, after only a handful of appearances, he's back playing for us. I've got no problem with players coming back to Fulham to play. There are a few out there now that we lost under Parker that I wish we could get back to come and play under Fulham.
Are you watching Matt
O'Reilly?
O'Reilly?
Matt O'Reilly is literally every time I see him play, I curse Scott Parker. In fact, if anyone follows me on Twitter, you probably see the words F Scott Parker written by me at least 30 times a year. And it's always Matt O'Reilly. Going back to Sessegnon. I think that if we can get him in and he can be nurtured and feel the love that he would feel coming back to Fulham, then I would love to have him back. Whether or not he's quite ready to think that he should give up on potentially trying to play European football, I don't know. But considering that his twin brother is now playing in League 2 or League 1, is it League 1? He should probably think that having a Premier League club that would be interested in having him to be there. And I also would be extremely excited to see what Marco Silva could do with him, because Marco has an ability to turn some players around. And if you watched him play as a youth player, you'll know that he doesn't just have to play on that left hand side. He played an awful lot of youth team football up to the under-21s of Fulham. As a central midfielder, as well as a left back and a left winger. So he is a little bit versatile in the position he can play. So I'd like to see him come back. I love him. So Sess, come home, mate, come home.
Interesting one. I will get to Jack's thoughts in just a second, but to go back to Matt O'Reilly, because I think it's worth mentioning in the podcast, there was a tweet from the Fulham Argentina account, I think it was last week, in regards to Matt O'Reilly, that translated from Spanish to not a moment goes by that I don't cry from Parker letting go of this player. Scott Parker is a terrorist. So an interesting thought and opinion. We can show the translation on screen for those to read so that they know that it's not me calling him a terrorist, just to clarify. But it was
I'm calling him a terrorist. Scott Parker is a football terrorist. I said it. Ash Woolford, right? Write the time and date down that you're reading this. Scott Parker is a football terrorist.
Well,
And there's not a Fulham fan or Bournemouth fan who's going to argue with me with that. All right.
I will argue with
Not
you for one
Barker,
simple
football terrorist.
reason. We are on a podcast on the interwebs that are going to see us get cancelled 2 weeks in,
Can
two
we add,
episodes in.
if we're going that far, let's add Tim Ream and Tom Kearney as well.
Oh,
Jack,
right, Jack. Jack,
What?
God, I really hope you're playing there. But your thoughts on Sessegnon. Let's rein
I'd
this back in.
love to have him back at the cottage. No, seriously. Yeah, you can probably guess what I'm going to say. I did like the lads. I don't think we need him back. I wouldn't mind if we had him back. I just think we need to move on. I think we do this all the time with Fulham. We get lost in the nostalgia, if I can speak correctly. I mean, look, the amount of Chelsea rejects we've bought, and fair enough, a lot of them have done well for us. Like one of you said, how many times has it gone well when we've brought a player back? Gordon Davies. When was that, Drew? Are we going back to the 70s?
He went to Chelsea, didn't he? That was in the 80s.
It was late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, right, we're going back a good 40 years. I'm gonna be a Fulham fan terrorist. Just in the context of this podcast, I'm not gonna go to Craven Cottage and do anything weird.
That's enough. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
We'll draw a line there.
But yeah, we just need to draw a line. We get so lost in nostalgia. Like we often sign older players who are past their peak.
Oh my days.
No, we do though, don't we?
He's 24. He's 24. And you're talking about him like
but you misunderstand me. I know Sessegnon's 24 years old, but I'm just saying, in the context of Fulham behaviour of signing players that we may have once had or not had, and then are past their peak. We've got a history of doing that. The point I'm making is, let's just get some fresh blood in, whether it be from our own academy or from another club. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Sessegnon's too old. Yeah, he's 24 years old. But come on, let's just get on with it. We get so caught up in the bullshit, and you can bleep that. Sorry, that's the first time I've swore on this podcast. But come on, let's progress. We need to progress, and we need to find some fresh blood and do something. Let's win some silverware. Let's build some more statues.
What is your obsession with statues? Okay.
I don't know. Knock them all down. Knock all the statues. Get the Michael Jackson statue down. Oh, no, they already did that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Right, moving on to some Premier League news instead, because we are now an hour and a half in, and I'm sure as much as it's boiled over for all of us in the hour and a half mark, I'm not sure many people have survived this far. And if you have, a credit to you, it was worth it. You just got to enjoy us have a massive terrorist moment. So there you go. Premier League news. City winning the Premier League for the record-breaking fourth time. Any of you care?
No.
Cool. Moving on. Aston Villa making the Champions League and potentially signing Ross Barkley. Thoughts?
Well done, Villa. Fully deserved.
I think Emery's done a great job. I think Barkley deserves the move if he gets it.
It's disappointing to not see Barkley available for us, because we spoke about that in the last podcast, how much we would enjoy a transfer of that ilk, and thought that we were the standard that he'd be sort of aiming for.
Can I just quickly say one thing about Villa fans? I'm very disappointed they're doing well, because when they're not doing well, they are some of the most funny people going. They have really got black humour. They are hilarious. But anyway.
Very, very fair assessment. I think it's a given that it's a missed opportunity in terms of Barkley, but for him to go from relegation to Champions League football, no one's going to argue with that transfer, are they? De Zerbi leaving Brighton. What are our thoughts on the matter?
Shock, right? I think we. I don't know. Can't remember who it was that shared it in our group chat when we were talking about it on Saturday. But I was at my stepdad's birthday party when I received a message about it, and I was extremely shocked because it's come out of nowhere. I've not heard. I've got a few Brighton mates who they completely come out of the blue for them. I'd not heard any rumours. I know there was some problems around him renewing his contract, which is ultimately why he's decided to leave because they couldn't give him what he wanted. But I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that he's leaving. I think he's done an outstanding job at Brighton. I thought he was a good fit for Brighton. I think it's one of those ones when you look at a club and a manager, they fit really, really well. Yeah, shocked.
Is he going Man United then?
Oh,
Is he?
Man United.
Genuinely
Man
don't know.
United manager's still in the job at the minute, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, but there's some connections, hasn't there?
He's rejected Bayern Munich, which is an interesting one. So I think he has intentions of staying in the country. Where is an interesting question. United could be likely. Chelsea could be likely. Dependent on whether or not either of those get rid of their manager. Are there any vacant Premier League jobs other than Brighton at the moment?
No. Liverpool filled theirs, haven't they today? So
yeah,
there's currently no vacant positions in the Premier League.
West Ham have
which is
obviously fully agreed and signed Lopetegui as well, so it's not them. It's just an interesting one. See where he goes.
Has De Zerbi left of his own accord? Is it a bit mutual consent, or he hasn't been?
It's
mutual consent.
It's a mutual agreement for him to leave at the end of the season. There was apparently some conflict between him and the Brighton board's objectives in terms of Premier League and what they want to do. Brighton, as we've seen them, have been this big money-making machine and they want to continue down that route. De Zerbi wants to push for a different style of football, actually sign some players for him to use in the squad and not just develop and sell on. And there's been some arguments between that and between the two sides of it, which you can understand from De Zerbi's perspective, but at the same point, why rock the boat if you're the Brighton board? So they've changed managers before, they'll change managers again, and they will continue to do well, in my opinion. But it does bring us on to Ipswich, who have been promoted to the Premier League. Congratulations, any Ipswich fans that may be watching or listening. Their manager has been linked to a job with the Brighton position. Don't see it happening myself. Don't see the point. You're in the Premier League. You'll be competing, hopefully, with the likes of Brighton for those low end of the table positions. Not necessarily relegation, but that's what Ipswich will be aiming for. Whether or not they get it's another story. A lot of Ipswich fans are saying that they would be immediately relegated and take the parachute payments, which is completely fair considering they came up from League One 2 years ago. So it's a fair argument for them. But I just don't understand it in terms of that move from Ipswich to Brighton.
What about this? What about Rob Edwards at Luton?
Could see that.
I mean, he's handled himself very well. He's been a credit to the league. He's been a credit to his club. He clearly is in the ascendancy. I don't think the relegation will have been a dent on his career because they were favourites to go down. And going back to AJ's point, Brighton just need someone to come in and do what they want them to do. They've got a structure there. They've got a system there. They know what they're doing. AJ's quite right. There did seem to be a conflict between De Zerbi and the board. He wanted to start having more input over the players that he wanted to sign, but Brighton have very much got a system. I am just wondering whether Rob Edwards might be a sneaky shout, because I don't think he would have the status or the gumption or the bottle to try and rock the boat, and it would be a clear step up for him. But I agree with everything AJ said about McKenna at Ipswich. Why would you leave? It's been a fabulous journey for them, and it's a whole new adventure. But I think Edwards might be a sneaky shout.
Yeah,
On that,
I think I agree. I think I agree. Really, Edwards may be a very good shout for Brighton because, like it was with Potter when he came in at Brighton, it's a step up, and he will be happy to do what Deserby's just done and do 2-3 years of that manager who manages a settled Premier League team who just go through their motions and do what they do in the background in terms of making money. I understand it from De Zerbi's point of view when you get to the point where actually, you know what, I've had 3 years of being stable, and yes, we made it into Europe once because of it, but we've made an awful lot of money. I would like some of that money to be able to step up a level. But I also understand it from Brighton's board point of view in the sense of, anyone who has been a football fan for longer than, the last 20 years will know that Brighton have been through the ringer. They're a football club that not almost died. They're a football club that I think did die at one point. They have managed to come back up, and they're a club like us in the sense of they dropped down the leagues, they've gone back up the leagues, they've built up, they've got themselves a nice football stadium, they've got themselves a nice training centre, they've got themselves a nice setup, and they found something that works for them in the sense of they're making money, which is 30 years ago, mid-90s, they would have begged to make a profit. They were such a bad state. So I understand it from their point of view too. And if you're a Brighton fan who's old enough to remember that, you probably also have that point of view too. That you're happy to be a good Premier League team that pushes for close to Europe. If you can get in Europe, then great. You'd rather that than push on, do what we tried to do, where we got a little bit too big for our boots and it blew up in our faces, and then we ended up getting relegated again, and it didn't work. So I think that they need to. I think if you're a Brighton fan, it's a bit of a interesting one. Rob Edwards is probably a really good shout for that managerial job. I don't see why McKenna would take it. If you've just been promoted, you're not going to take another managerial job unless that
no.
you're jumping there's something seriously wrong at Ipswich, which I don't think there is. I think they're riding the crest, aren't they, at the moment? So I'll be very, very surprised to see him move on.
They finished Ipswich, that is, have finished second and been promoted the last 2 seasons. So if anyone fancies a flutter on Ipswich finishing second in the Premier League, be my guest. And with that in mind and flutters, we will do like the Spurs players and fly, because we are well into this podcast and there's plenty more to talk about. But unfortunately, we also don't want to chew your ears off for much longer. We have a quick message about growing the show. Just to tell you before we go, Ash, do you want to lead us off on that?
Yeah, so obviously we're new. We're trying to grow. We had some decent numbers for the first week of the show. We had some good feedback from a few people about the first week's show as well. We are desperately trying to grow the show. So if you're a Fulham fan, please share it amongst your mates. Let them know about the show. We want to get some good Fulham growth as well. If you're a fan of another football club, we promise we are planning on talking more and more about other Premier League things and not just about Fulham. Obviously, the whole premise of the show is just from a Fulham point of view. And we want to have some interaction with other fan bases as well because of that. So please do come over, follow the channel on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Ful-On Fulham, and do it that way. We are starting up our Patreon for anyone who wants to come and sort of help the show in the sense of growing the show. It helps us sort of buy better equipment. Anyone who's watched Drew's face over the last 2 episodes will realise that he's very close to sitting in the dark. We need to get him a light. So stuff like that helps. Obviously, it just helps. So all the information that we'll put in the description of the podcast for you to come and join over on everything like that. Please
we'll
do
work on
share,
some exclusive content for people as well to add to the Patreon so that you don't feel like you're not getting something for your buck too, whether or not that be individual conversations with any of us or videos of us doing other things, football related or anything like that. We will work on something. If you have any ideas for us, also do let us know. With that in mind, do we bid them adieu?
We do, yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks,
we
guys.
do.
Great,
Thank you all. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and see you in the next one.